Very good morning to one and all, my dear students and the listeners. I am Professor Ashwadi Fulzele, Assistant Professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. Welcomes you all for the online lecture of Advanced Manufacturing Technique, an elective subject of 8th semester Mechanical Engineering. My dear friends, we have started discussing about the non-conventional machining process, that is the advanced machineries. Those are implemented in industries for removing the material and, of course, to achieve the required geometry. In those sequence, we saw the comparison between conventional and non-conventional machining process. How and what are the demerits or disadvantages of conventional machining process over non-conventional machining process, right? The major difference is like the tool comes in direct contact with the workpiece in conventional, whereas in non-conventional machining process, it, it does not happens like. Now, in today's lecture, we will see few of the non-conventional machining process along with the figure and the pictorial representation will show you all the basic components of particular advanced machineries, right? Now, as on your screen, you can see the electrical discharge machining. It is shortly abbreviated as EDM, or sometimes it is also called as spark erosion, spark machining, thermal erosion, or electro erosion process. The basic block diagram for EDM, as you can see on your screen, I will read quickly the basic components. I'm starting from left top corner. It is a servo control gap is mentioned there. Servo control gap is connected to the tool feed along with the downward arrow which indicates the motion of tool, and just below to the tool feed a tool is seen. Then on the right hand side there is one filter. There is a filter which is connected to the pump, and as you can see the pump is connected to the reservoir or the tank wherein the dielectric fluid is present. Then fixture is there, then it is connected as you can see in this block diagram. The DC pulse generator is provided that gives the power supply, and the supply is connected with the servo control, and as you can see workpiece has given a positive charge whereas tool is given with the negative charge, and in the intercourse between the tool and the workpiece what happens is shown in the zoomed figure in the right hand side, wherein you can see the tool, workpiece, and a symbol representing the flash or the spark, isn't it? And it is mentioned like spark discharge in between the gap. My dear friends, one another point that I would like to mention here, the tool is not in contact ever with the workpiece. That is what the basic difference between the conventional and non-conventional machining processes. It justifies here. The main attraction of EDM over conventional machining is that this technique is thermoelectric process to erode undesired material from the surface of the workpiece. Uh, the principle of electronic erosion is uh, utilized in this process, and that is why it is also called as spark erosion process. Now we will see the constructional feature of electro discharge machining. See, the system consists of a shaped tool, power supply source, dielectric fluid and its circulation line, servo controlled tool, feed mechanism, and the workpiece, as we have seen in the previous picture. The tool is made cathodic, that is negative charge is given, whereas workpiece is made anodic, wherein the positive charge is given. The terminals are connected to the DC power supply to create potential difference between the work and the tool. The distance between work and tool is known as spark gap, and it is filled by dielectric fluid, as you can see in the picture behind. The workpiece and tool both are immersed into the dielectric fluid, and the gap is maintained at around 0.02 to 0.4 mm. That signifies, that proves that tool is not in contact with the workpiece. Now the working principle. My dear friends, the working principle in very generalized terminology I would like to explain here. Like whenever the fuse happens at our home, uh, spark is generated. My dear friends, how is the fuse happen? How the spark is happening in our home when the live wire, that is positive charged carrier wire, is come in contact with the negative charged wire, the fuse happens. And after the fuse, if we could observe the particular place, particular location, then we will see the wire is burned completely. Almost they are instantly melted and solidified quickly. That terminology is nothing but the spark erosion. That principle is utilized in the electrodischarge machining. Let us look into the working principle. A high voltage is applied between the terminals and it induces electric field in the spark gap. The free electrons on the tool are subjected to electrostatic force, and hence they are emitted from the tool and accelerated towards the workpiece. There would be collision between electrons and the molecules in dielectric. It causes further generation of electrons because of ionization of dielectric molecules. This cycle process increase concentration of electrons in spark gap, and when potential difference is sufficiently high, dielectric breakdown and large number of electrons will flow from tool to the workpiece and ions from the job to the tool. This movement of electrons visually is seen as spark, and electrical energy is dissipated as thermal energy of spark. With a very short duration of spark, temperature of electrodes raised locally to more than their normal boiling point, and this heat of spark melt a tiny bit of metal from the workpiece. The melted metal cools and solidifies as tiny particles in dielectric. The metal is carried away due to circulation of dielectric by means of pump, and the process continues. The process parameters in short: voltage in the range of 40 to 300 volt, current 0.5 to 400 ampere, spark gap 0.0125 to 0.125 mm. It may vary from 0.02 to 0.4 also. The pulse duration is 2 to 2000 microseconds, and material removal rate is 800 cubic millimeter to 1500 cubic millimeter. The application of electro discharge machining. Electro discharge machining drilling to drill very small holes, and EDM milling to milling complex shapes. EDM can be used to make parts with irregular shapes with precision for forging press tool, extrusion dies, cutting tool dies, etc. Now a very similar methodology used in as the wire cut electro discharge machining, wherein the setup you can see the dielectric fluid pump set. The pump set is connected to the dielectric fluid nozzle, then a guide roller. The guide roller is rotated, as you can see the direction of rotation, it is in clockwise. The wire take up mechanism is associated in it. A workpiece you can see the power supply, electrode wire, wire feed mechanism, then work table, control unit. Let us look into the constructional feature and the working of wire cut electro discharge machining. Wire EDM use electrothermal mechanism to cut the electrically conductive material. EDM consists NC unit to numerical controlled unit to control the counter movement of work, wire feeding mechanism to move wire at constant tension, power supply and dielectric fluid supply. Wire of 0.02 to 2.3 mm diameter is utilized, and similarly tool and workpiece is made cathodic and anodic respectively. Dielectric is deionized water applied as localized steam rather than submerging the whole work. Wire for EDM is made of brass, copper, tungsten and zinc or brass coated wire. The wire should have high tensile strength and good electrical conductivity. With those setup we can understand the wire cut EDM is very similar to that of hacksaw mechanism. The in control environment control parameters, the wire is utilized to cut the workpiece. Now laser beam machining. It is shortly abbreviated as LBM. The laser beam machining, the acronym stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. It is a thermal metal removal process which uses laser beam to melt and vaporize particles on the surface of metallic and non-metallic workpieces. The figure is representing the constructional feature of laser beam machining. A laser is nothing but a ruby crystal. That ruby crystal is used